Welcome back to the channel, folks, where today we look at a bright, enticing flag of water margins. The plant that we are looking at today is known as yellow flag or flag iris, and it is a member of the family Iridaceae, or put simply, the iris family. So, without further ado, let's take a close look at this plant in situ. Welcome folks to another plant in the series here on Wildlife Ranger. The plant that we are looking at today is commonly known as the wild iris, yellow flag or water flag, and it is a plant in the family Iridaceae, or put simply, the iris family, and it also has the complicated Latin name of Iris pseudacorus. Let's do a quick stem to toe of this water marginal, which grows as a herbaceous perennial to the height of 50 to 150 centimetres. The plant begins as a rhizome, giving rise to broad sword-like leaves which encapsulate the base, rather like a grass. The leaves themselves are lanceolate or sword-like and are bluish-green in colour. They have a distinctive parallel venation with a notable mid-rib. The stem, as we move up it, is solid and supports the flower structure, of which there are 3 to 4 flowers at its terminus. The Perianth, the collective name given to the flower structure, we're going to look at detail because it is a little bit confusing in the first instance when we look at it. And we can see that it is broken into 3 essential components. We have the lower fall petal, the standard petals, which are just behind this top structure. So we have the fall petal, the standard petal, and then these 3 petaloid-like structures, which are in fact not petals, but are in fact extensions of the style arm and a specialist structure containing the reproductive parts. And as you can see, it's composed of a wavy end, a flap, and beneath the flap is a receptive stigma. Along the length of the petaloid arm is also a groove into which sits the stamens with the split elongate anther, which is has a role in pollination. So that's the general structure of the perianth. Below the major flower parts, we have the ovary, and we term this inferior. So this is an inferior ovary. And when the process of pollination is complete, this swells, becoming an elongate fruit, which is very distinctive, of the order of 4 to 8 centimetres in length. So it's quite a big fruit, and it's sort of split into 3 structures, or 3 parts. So that's the perianth and the flower structure of the plant. And in today's episode, we're going to relate the features and characteristics to the structure and function of the plant in terms of pollination as we progress through the video. But before we do that, we're going to take a close look at the perianth in more detail, just to expand on those points. So in this little section of the video, we're going to try to explain how the plant structure of the perianth is put together. Here we have what's termed a fall petal, which, as you can see, contains green and purple lines, which are nectar guides, guiding the insect, which is usually a long-tongued bee, down into the nectar tube, which lies at the base of the ovary here, which is inferior. So this is the fall petal. Above it sits, and it's a little bit more obvious on this plant, 3 much reduced stand petals. You can just see one here, and one further back over here. And these are small and much reduced. Now, when you look at the plant at first glance, you will see these structures here, which look like petals, and they're most certainly not petals. The petaloid structures are in fact style arms or modified reproductive organs. And here we have a bee which is rubbed right up against this anther as we speak. But the gist of pollination we'll cover further on in the video. So what we have is the fall petal, the much reduced stand petal, and these petaloid structures which I was about to describe before the bee came along. And these consist, from the top view, you can only see it when you look at the bottom, of a long tube in which the stamen sits where it is, with an elongated anther which splits down its length, and it's that which we just seen the bee rub against. Here at the end of this style arm, we have a little wavy crest, and beneath the wavy crest we have a flap, underneath of which is the ripening stamen, or the receptive stamen, I should say. So that is the overall structure of the perianth. Beneath it is the ovary. The ovary is termed inferior, meaning it is below the major petal structures of the perianth. And obviously when it has been pollinated, it forms a fruit by swelling, and it forms a distinct three-angled fruit of about 4 to 8 centimetres in length, so it's quite big and noticeable, and contains numerous seeds which are brown to orange in form. So in summary, what we have is the fall petal, the stand petals just here beneath the styloid arms, and the styloid arms, which are modified reproductive parts facilitating pollination. And the overall structure of the perianth is such that it is set in 3 distinct angles at about 120 degrees apart, maximising the direction of approach from any potential pollinator, which, as we've seen, is usually a long-tongued bee, because it will take a long tongue between 7 and 15 millimetres to penetrate down past the nectar guides and down into the nectar well at the base of the ovary. So that's a detailed overview of what is actually happening in the perianth.
This historic image depicts the rhizomatous nature of the plant, and consistent with good practice, the plant was not uprooted.
So in this segment, we are going to attempt to explain what is going on in terms of pollination. A bee will approach the flag petal and land on this elevated part of the petal, or the furl petal as it's known, somewhere around here. It will move its proboscis down into the nectar well, which is located at the base of the ovary. In the process of doing that, as you can see, it will brush against this frilly end of the styloid arm, which, if we look slightly below the wavy crest, we will see it contains a flap, and behind that flap sits a stigma which is ripe. When the bee approaches the plant, its first point of contact is with the stigma, and therefore it will transfer pollen from any other plant to this stigma on the styloid arm. As it probes further and further down into the plant, it will have its fill of nectar and emerge. And in the process of emerging, if we have a look, it will rub its back at some point off this chap here, which is a stamen containing of a filament and a longitudinal anther which splits along its length and will coat the insect with a liberal dosing of pollen, thereby recompleting the cycle again. So this is how pollination occurs on the perianth, and how confusing the perianth might be on first view, because these styloid arms are not in fact petals, but extension of the reproductive parts, which have a role in pollination, as I've indicated.
What we have here are a few loose slides depicting the fruit capsule and it splitting into three, liberating numerous seeds. We also have a technical slide illustrating the position of the ovary. And of course, no sequence would be completed without a long-tongued bee sticking his tongue out at us. Whilst filming the plant, we had a few opportunities to film a foraging bee. Whilst the shots are not ideal, they do depict the bee with its furry back coming into the first point of contact, which is the stigma, and transferring any pollen it may have on its back to that stigma. The clip illustrates the bee levering the style arm upwards and making contact at the crest of the stigma. The bee, of course, bringing pollen from other plants which it has visited, thereby facilitating cross-pollination. The contact with the anther isn't depicted, however, in the following shots of the flower structure, we can see how the stamen has an elongate structure which will brush along the fur of the bee's back. Here we see another fleeting visit where the bee thrusts its tongue into the nectar tube. Here we see the stamen, i.e. the filament and anther, protected in a groove or furrow in the style arm. The anther is elongated along its length, and on the bee's exit will dust it with a liberal dose of pollen. In this clear view from above, we see the fall petal, the standard petal, and a clear view of the petaloid style arms from above. As pointed out, the plant is a herbaceous perennial growing 100 to 150 centimeters high. It is an aquatic marginal of damp or shallow wet water edges such as rivers, streams, canals, bogs and marshes, and in this case a mill pond. It is a member of the family Iridaceae or the Iris family. The plant is known by a variety of common names, notably flag iris, yellow flag, water flag or wild iris. The prefix iris comes from the Greek god of the rainbow, which also reflects the wide variety of flower colours in the genus. And incidentally, the last job the goddess of Iris had was to sever the thread that joined the body to the soul. The suffix pseudacorus served to distinguish between the flag iris and the very similar Acorus calamus, the sweet flag. As always, before you journey into the field, we summarise the features and characteristics which will enable you to identify it and find it in the field. As always, we include a detailed botanical slide which can be stopped at any point for those of you who may wish to study the plant in further detail. So let's begin with the floristic characteristics. The flowers at the terminus number 4 to 10 and are 7 to 10 centimeters in length. They have 3 standard petals and 3 broad oval fall petals. The fall petals are veined and dotted with green nectar guides. The ovary is inferior, is three-chambered and is enclosed within a protective spathe. The collective name for the flower structure is the perianth. It consists of 3 large fall petals and the much smaller 3 standard petals. The sepals are absent and it has 3 stamens and 3 stigmas on each of the petaloid style arms. It has 1 ovary, which is inferior and is 3-celled. The plant flowers between the months of May and August. The inferior ovary swells into an oblong, 3-angled capsule of approximately 4 to 8 centimeters long. It contains many seeds of approximately 7 to 9 millimeters in size and are smooth and brown. We would of course be remiss if we did not cover the leaves. The leaves are basal or on the flowering stem. They are 12 to 90 centimeters and are narrow, lanceolate, straight-sided, sword-shaped and have entire margins which are non-hairy. The veins are parallel and has a conspicuous raised midrib. The overall colour is a bluish green and the base sheaves the stem. As pointed out, this herbaceous perennial propagates as a rhizome. We conclude the video with a few general shots of the wild iris in the field. Well folks, that's all from me on the yellow flag. Once again, thank you very much for watching and making it to the end. We'd love to hear your comments and observations of the plant and its pollinators. Please feel free to do so beneath the description. If you have liked or enjoyed this video or found it interesting or educational, please like, share and subscribe to help this channel become a success. In the meantime, in the words of Maggie, our international symbol of floral appreciation, if messing around in the water margins, don't get your paws wet. In the meantime, go outdoors and enjoy nature.